right now, the time is super confusing, and if you're like me, you're beginning to get really annoyed, and you're starting to realize just how small you are. And it's really frustrating when you have things that you're trying to do so hard, and you're working really hard, and you feel like you're doing everything you can do, but then it just falls apart because you realize you're very powerless. Lots of times when you look out, if you ever look out at the stars, you just, sometimes you'll feel so tiny, because God is so much bigger than we are, and our circumstances and our country and our government. God is infinitely bigger. In 2 Corinthians 12, 9 through 11, it says, "My grace is sufficient for you. My power is made perfect in weakness. Therefore I will boast all the more gladly about my weakness, so that Christ's power may rest on me. That is why, for Christ's sake, I delight in weakness, in insults, in hardships, in persecutions, in difficulties. For when I am weak, then I am strong." I'm having some conversations lately, and it's interesting that when we're doing okay, when we got everything lined up, when everything is working great, we don't need God. God is someone that is just kind of out there. It's kind of nice. Talk to him when you feel like it. Go to church for some fluffy feelings. But when you're on your knees, when you don't know what to do, when you're alone, when you're destitute, when you're poor in spirit, when you're poor fit actually, that's when you need God. That's when you realize the reality of who God is and how God impacts you. Lots of times when we're Christians, we grow very apathetic towards God because we're like, oh, I don't need God. God's nice. It makes me feel good. I like to read the Bible sometimes. Worship music is soothing to me. It makes me feel good. But we forget that, in a minute, we could lose everything. In a sec, nothing is certain. Nothing is permanent. The whole world is, can go away in a second. But God is real, and God is eternal. But we don't realize how much we need God until we're actually in need. Lots of time. When we're doing fine, we don't realize the need for God. But when things are rough, you realize, oh my gosh, I need the Lord. If I don't have him, what is the purpose of living? And sometimes I feel like God allows, I'm not saying that coronavirus, God caused it or whatever, but sometimes God allows storms in our lives to come and to shake us, to make us remember, hey, we need God. All of this is just flowers in the wind. It could all crumble. And that's why we need God, because God is the ruler of everything. And our little worlds are so fragile and so delicate. We need God. At times in my life where I've been really struggling or really down or in a really dark place, those are the times I need God the most. And it's only when I'm in those moments that God becomes very real to me. And in those dark times is when I realize how much I need God. And those are the times when I cry out to God and I'm I need God. And God is all about glory, which is kind of crazy because we're not supposed to seek glory, but we're supposed to seek the glory of God. And God likes to have situations where things fall apart, and the only way for them to get solved is through his glory. For example, in Gideon in the Bible. Gideon was a coward. He was shy. He didn't have faith, but he was chosen by God because of those reasons to do something mighty for God. And God made it where it was undeniable that God's work was being done and that it was through God's power that he defeated the enemy. It wasn't by Gideon's might. It's not by our might. It's by God's might. And we need to not take for granted God's goodness, or take for granted the fact that, oh, we're fine. We don't really need God. We can just turn God on and off like a switch. Like, that's not the way it goes. God is always what we desperately need. But in the seconds and moments in our lives when we're feeling okay, we realize we don't need God. We feel like we don't need God. But God is always the same, and our need for God is always the same. But we're very forgetful. Lots of times in the Bible, the Israelites always are forgetting that they need God. And it's like, and they repented and they came back to God. But then the next generation, they forgot about God and they did even more evil than the generation before them. And this happens over and over and over and over and over again. And you're like, oh, these people are so dumb. But then you think about it, you're like, we're exactly the same. The second we don't need God, we forget about God, or we try to intellectualize God, and we don't realize how much we desperately need the Lord. And in a time like this, like, a lot of people's lives are falling apart. Like, they've lost their jobs, they can't pay rent, or they have renters that aren't paying rent and now they don't know how to pay their mortgage. Like, there's all these there's things where people's lives falling apart, or people are sick and dying, or hospitals are overfull, or people just don't know what to do. And all of a sudden, like, we were in this very nice, state, and all of a sudden, poof, global pandemic. No one saw that coming. All of a sudden, hey, God is a lot more relevant now. But the thing is, God was just as relevant. God is always relevant. But lots of times, God allows for seasons to come where we remember how much we desperately need God. And that's not a time to be like, oh, how could God allow this to happen? It's like, God will do whatever he wants. It's not really up to us to say what God is doing. But it is, what we are supposed to do is give God the glory and to seek him and to know that this is his perfect plan. And that's always never what we expect or what we want. And so, obviously, a lot of this stuff might not be make a lot of sense. Whatever, I'm just kind of on a rant. And yeah, I just am super annoyed at a lot of things right now. And I really don't want to deal with it. I just kind of want to do what I want to do. But that's not really an option. And it's really frustrating. And so, just know you're not the only person out there that's super annoyed and frustrated. But God is the same yesterday, today, and forever.